Hi everyone, this is Freedom Master Charles Galofre, and I'd like to welcome you to this video on chess strategy. The following video will be focusing on bishop versus knight. This is another video as a part of our series. In this position, this is a famous position, by the way. The player of the white pieces is Vasily Smyslov, and the player of the black pieces is none other than the great Mikhail Tal. So in this position, black has the advantage because he has a better minor piece, and he also has a better king. Notice that black's king has the ability to move freely along the board, but white's king cannot do so because it's defending the pawn on a4, and as a result, the king is he has no flexibility whatsoever. Additionally, the knight does not have the squares along the diagonal. It's passively defending the d3 pawn and only has the c2 square as an option. So in the game, black started off by playing king to f6. His idea is to penetrate by way of the king side. White plays king b3, king g6, king a3, king h5. Notice that white doesn't want to push any pawns because in the endgame, timing is very influential, and pushing pawns would be detrimental to his position. Those are valuable temples that he will be able to use in the future. So right now, white is basically employing a strategy of passive defense. The threat now is to penetrate by playing king to g4 and king h3. So white is forced to play h3, but as we know, that pawn is not safe because it's in a white square and the bishop can at one point attack it. King g6, king b3, king g7, king a3, king f6, king b3, bishop to e8. Now the bishop is going to try to enter the position from a different diagonal. Knight to g2. If knight to f3, then bishop h5, knight e5, bishop d1, king a3, king a6, knight c6, bishop c2, knight e5, h6, and after g4 and bishop d1, white is in Zugzwang. So going back a couple of moves to the position after white's knight to g2, black continues with bishop to h5, king c2, bishop e2, knight e1, bishop f1 targeting the h3 pawn, knight to f3, and bishop takes h3. So you might be wondering, why allow him to capture the pawn instead of playing h4? The problem is that if he plays h4, then the black king could enter the position and basically capture all three pawns. So knight to g5, bishop g2, knight takes pawn check, king g7, knight g5, king g6, king d2, bishop c6, king c1, bishop g2. This is there is the opportunity of capturing the pawn on a4, but the idea behind bishop to g2 is to prevent the knight from remaneuvering to e5 and coming back into the game, and as a result giving the black king the ability or the time to regroup. So the game continued. King d2, king h5, knight e6, bishop c6, knight c7, king g4, knight d5, king takes g3, knight e7, bishop d7. As you can see, this game is completely winning for black. Knight d5, bishop takes a4, knight b6, bishop e8, knight d5, king f3, knight c7, bishop c6, knight e6, a4. It's clear after that move who's going to win the game. The pawn is going to be pushed down the board, and the king is going to approach the d3 pawn and eventually pick up the d3 pawn and the c4 pawn. So knight takes c5, a3, knight b3, a2, king c1, king f4, king b2, king e3. The game continues. c5, and after f2, white resigns.